Starting seeds indoors is a great way to get a jump start on the season. So, in this episode of the Epic Gardening Podcast, I'm going to show you exactly how to do that. I'm your host. This show is all about growing amazing plants. If you love gardening or want to learn how to grow amazing, nutrient-dense food, subscribe so you never miss an episode. If you want to have a head start on spring and get those crops in the ground a little bit earlier, then you might consider starting your seeds indoors. Today we are going to talk about my simple seed starting method that anybody can do, and you don't even need a green thumb to be successful with it. It doesn't matter if you're a homesteader or an apartment dweller. As long as you have access to a heat source and a light source, you can start your own seeds indoors. All you need is a few key components, and we're going to talk about those today. Now, I am mostly going to focus on vegetable gardens today, but these tips and tricks apply to just about anything that you would want to start from seed. Now, not everything needs to be started from seed, but there are certain vegetables that do really well when they are started indoors and given a head start on the season. Vegetables like tomatoes, peppers, eggplants, lettuces, onions, broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage. These kinds of vegetables benefit from being started indoors. Why? Because it takes them longer to germinate, and so by the time that the soil outside has warmed up enough to plant these seeds, it's often too late. It's already warm enough for them to germinate, but then we have a much higher chance of them rotting off before they germinate. The first thing that you're going to need in order to successfully start seeds indoors is a container. You can use anything from milk cartons to yogurt containers to egg cartons. And I've seen people use toilet paper, rolls and wine bottles, and all sorts of things to start their seeds indoors. There are also seed propagation mixers which have little individual cells where you can start your seeds. My favorite way to start seeds indoors is using these recycled milk cartons. It's super easy. You just cut the side out of it, put some soil in there, water it, and plant your seeds. And then, once they start germinating, just place them under a grow light. Now, what kind of soil should you use for starting seeds? Starting seeds indoors is different than potting up your plants into larger pots. For one, most potting mixers are too heavy and compacting. When used for seed starting, they will stay too wet for too long and your seeds will rot before they germinate. Therefore, we need a soil that is very loose and airy and drains really well. One option is to buy a seed starting mix at the store. I personally make my own by combining vermiculite, peat, perlite, or coconut coir. In order for your seeds to germinate, they need to be moist but not soggy. So having a soil that stays airy and loose and doesn't compact is really important for success. If you're looking for something organic, another option is to use Promix MP Organic. That's what I use for starting my seeds indoors. Another option is to use vermiculite or coconut coir and just add some compost into it. Vermiculite and peat are pretty similar. Peat holds a little bit more moisture and is a little bit lighter weight, whereas vermiculite is a little bit heavier and it's more dense and it holds its shape a little bit better. Coconut coir is made from coconut fiber, and it's a good alternative to peat if you don't have access to it or you don't want to use it for whatever reason. Next, we need to talk about light. Light is one of the most limiting factors when we are trying to grow plants indoors. Depending on the season, it can be nearly impossible to find bright enough light indoors. Most plants need 14 hours of bright light each day, so we need to mimic that with our grow lights. There are many options for grow lights, and they come at a variety of prices. The main thing that you want to look for is full spectrum lights. They're typically white, and they emit a wide range of light. The other thing you'll see is the amount of wattage the light puts out. Wattage doesn't directly correlate to quality, but the brighter the better when it comes to grow lights. Just like full spectrum, the term lumens describes the brightness of the light. The more lumens, the brighter the light. A good rule of thumb is to aim for between 2,500 to 3,000 lumens for every square foot of plants. Also, try to get a light that gives off less heat. Heat is usually a good thing in the winter, but during the summer months it can become a problem. One of my favorite lights for starting seeds indoors are shop lights. Shop lights are relatively inexpensive, and they put out a lot of lumens for their size. They also have the added bonus of putting out a lot of heat, which is nice in the winter months. In the summertime, however, you may need to supplement with fans to keep your plants from overheating. If you are limited on space, then consider going with a fluorescent grow light. Fluorescent lights give off less heat and they take up less room. They also tend to be less expensive. Whatever light you decide on, just remember that it needs to be positioned close to your plants, ideally within a few inches. Another key component to starting seeds indoors is warmth. Seeds need warmth in order to germinate. Some seeds need a specific amount of warmth. For instance, tomatoes and peppers need around 70 degrees Fahrenheit in order to germinate properly. Other vegetables like carrots, beets and onions prefer colder temperatures. But really, most vegetable seeds will germinate well between 65 to 75 degrees Fahrenheit. You can easily achieve these temperatures using a heat mat. The nice thing about using a heat mat is that it maintains a consistent temperature. You don't have to worry about it fluctuating too much. Just plug it in and set your seeds on top of it. Perhaps the most important factor to starting seeds indoors is water. Overwatering is probably the #1 killer of seedlings. Most of us were taught that plants need to be watered deeply when the soil is dry to the touch. However, when it comes to seedlings, this isn't necessarily true. Seedlings have a hard time taking up water because their root systems aren't developed yet. So watering them deeply, even when the soil is dry, can actually drown their roots and kill them. Instead, I recommend misting the surface of the soil whenever it starts to feel dry to the touch. This keeps the soil slightly moist without saturating the whole soil mix. I know what you're thinking. Plants need deep watering. Watering from above allows the seedling to absorb water through its leaves. This works especially well with the milk carton method because the water drains out the bottom of the carton and provides additional humidity in the carton, which helps the seedling from drying out. The last thing to consider when starting seeds indoors is when to transplant your seedlings outdoors. This is really dependent on your climate and the crop that you're growing. Most sources say that you should wait until after the last frost, but I recommend waiting until 2 weeks after the last frost. If you don't wait until the soil has warmed up a little bit, the roots of the seedling can easily be damaged and the plant won't survive. Before you transplant your seedlings, though, I recommend hardening them off for about a week. Hardening off is where you slowly introduce your plants to the harsh environment of the outdoors. To harden off your plants, put them in a shady area for 1 day. Then move them to an area that gets morning sun but not intense afternoon sun for 2 days. On the 3rd day, give them full sun for 4 hours and then bring them home and water them deeply. On the 4th day, leave them in the shade for 3 to 4 hours and then bring them home. On the 5th day, leave them in the sun for 6 to 8 hours and then bring them home. Once they've gone through this process, they are ready to be transplanted into the garden, and that's it. That is my simple method for starting seeds indoors. I know it seems like a lot, but once you've done it a few times, it's really not that bad. In fact, it's really fun and rewarding to watch those seedlings emerge and grow. And there's nothing quite like going outside in the spring and harvesting fresh food from your garden. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please leave me a review on iTunes. I love reading what you guys have to say, and I try to respond to as many reviews as I can. Also, if you haven't joined our free community, join our free community. It's a great way to ask questions, share what's going on in your garden, and learn from other epic gardeners just like you. And finally, if you haven't gotten a copy of my book, The Epic Gardener, go to epigardening.com, book and grab a copy. It's the culmination of everything I've learned over the past decade of growing food. And it's laid out in a really easy to read, beautiful coffee table style book that you'll want to keep on your shelf. And if you'd like to support the show, you can become a patron. Visit our support page to learn more about how you can support the show and get some pretty awesome perks while you read it. Thank you so much for listening. I'll see you next time.